Angela Duckworth, a researcher and psychologist, wrote this book to help others in attaining excellence. She has spent many years conducting interviews, performing experiments, administering tests, and checking published studies just to understand grit. Duckworth believes that grit is the secret to success. It can help a person unlock his potential. This book contains practical tips and theoretical explanations. It illustrates ideas and techniques through anecdotes and descriptions of past studies. Because the author shared how grit affected her personally, the readers can easily identify the major benefits of grittiness. The material you'll read is divided into 3 parts. The first part deals with the basics of grit, its definition, elements, importance, etc. The second part focuses on how grit grows. That section of the book teaches you how to establish and improve your own grit. It discusses the 4 elements of grit, namely interest, practice, purpose, and hope. The third part focuses on teaching grit to other people. If you are a teacher, a sports coach, or a parent, you will surely find this part useful. What grit is and why it matters. Showing up. For centuries, people have sought to discover the difference between those who succeed and those who fail. Countless studies and experiments prove that it is not about heredity or status in life. There are some who inherited vast sums of money from their parents but still failed. Others, however, succeeded even if they were born poor. What characteristic helps a person to overcome challenges and achieve his goals? The U.S. Military Academy, situated in West Point, New York, sheds some light on this matter. The Academy's admission process is as strict as that of the top universities in the United States. Excellent grades and ACT/SAT scores are mandatory. In addition, you have to obtain a nomination from a senator, a congressman, or the VP of the U.S. Then you must get great scores in a fitness evaluation that involves sit-ups, push-ups, and running. About 14,000 high school students apply to West Point every year. After all the screening processes, however, only 1,200 students will be admitted. Curiously, 20% of cadets quit before graduation, and a significant portion of these dropouts quit during a training program called Beast Barracks, or just Beast. Beast is held during the student's first summer in the academy. Why would anyone quit within 2 months? Considering all the hardships each cadet goes through in the admission process, you'll expect them to stay longer than that. However, Beast is not your typical training program. The Handbook of the Academy describes Beast as a program designed to turn cadets into soldiers. During Beast, each day starts at 5 a.m. and ends at roughly 10 p.m. Each training day consists of various activities such as flag raising, weapons training, classroom instructions, etc. While in this training program, there will be no weekends, breaks, except meals, and contact with people outside of the academy. Beast challenges the cadets socially, mentally, militarily, and physically. Overcoming the Beast. Numerous psychologists have tried to identify the trait that helps a cadet survive Beast. The initial efforts, which were conducted back in the 1950s, tested the cadets' imagination and creativity. However, it turned out that these characteristics have nothing to do with the cadets' chances of surviving the program. The succeeding studies showed that intelligence is also not the determining factor. Some cadets with the highest grades in SAT/ACT scores left because of Beast. Then there were cadets with lower scores and grades but survived. Physicality, leadership potential, and available skills were also not the answer to the question. A psychologist in West Point named Mike Matthews gave an interesting explanation. He said that surviving Beast requires the never-give-up attitude. Outstanding talent, intelligence, or physical strength doesn't guarantee that you'll go through the program if you will quit in the face of adversity. If you are tenacious, however, you'll have great chances of making it through complex tasks and extreme activities. This theory seems to be correct since it applies to other fields. For example, the most successful people in any given field have the requisite knowledge, experience, and network. However, those assets are not enough. Many individuals who possess those assets still failed. It turns out that the major difference between those who succeed and those who fail is the never-give-up attitude, also known as grit. You can have all the talent in the world, but you will still fail if you will quit as soon as problems arise. People who stay despite adversities develop the necessary characteristics to survive. Gritty salesman. Sales is an industry where objection and rejection are common. A typical salesman receives at least a dozen rejections a day. In a study done by Angela Duckworth, she discovered that succeeding in the sales industry requires more than just conscientiousness, extroversion, and emotional stability. Grit is the factor that determines who will survive and those who won't. Important note, talent and tenacity are two different things. It's good to have potential, but it won't do you any good if you don't have the never give up attitude. Distracted by talent. Angela Duckworth, the author of Grit, worked as a teacher before becoming a psychologist. Teaching opened her eyes to an important fact. Achievements require more than just talent. She taught 7th grade math in her first year as a teacher. The focus of her lessons were decimals, fractions, and the basics of geometry and algebra. Duckworth noticed that some students understood mathematical concepts quicker than others. Those talented students could see underlying patterns present in math problems. After seeing an example, they can solve similar problems correctly. Curiously, not all talented students performed well in the classroom. Some of them did receive excellent grades. Others, however, received mediocre or poor grades. Then there were students who struggled to understand the lessons but received high grades. These students, which Duckworth referred to as overachievers, attended her class daily and worked hard. If they couldn't understand something, they kept on trying until they got it, or they asked for help during free time. Their work ethic helped them earn outstanding grades. Duckworth realized that aptitude alone is not enough. Being intelligent and getting high grades are two different things. This discovery surprised her. Many people assume that talent plays an important role in math. Talented students will almost always outperform their less talented classmates. Duckworth had that assumption when she started teaching. After all, a student who understands math concepts quickly can be expected to perform better than others. She also believed that the gap between talented students and the rest of the class will widen over time. However, it wasn't the case. Talent distracted her from seeing the truth. Her discovery led to a series of difficult questions. When a student fails to comprehend a concept, is it possible that he just needed to struggle a little bit in order to get it? Should the teacher use a different teaching approach in this kind of situation? Before judging a student's overall capacity to learn, should teachers consider the value of hard work? In addition, even the least talented students sounded smart when discussing things that interest them, like songs, sports, TV programs, etc. She realized that all her students had mastered countless ideas before. Thus, solving algebraic equations is certainly possible. All they need to do is work hard. Hard work and Charles Darwin. Sir Francis Galton, a cousin of Charles Darwin, earned knighthood thanks to his contributions to the different branches of science and mathematics. He published a book about high achievement back in 1869. After collecting and analyzing information regarding well-known personalities, he made an important discovery. He learned that successful people shared 3 characteristics: zeal, ability, and tenacity. The book claimed that talent is an essential quality for success. Upon reading the said book, Darwin contacted his cousin to express his surprise. Darwin believed that humans, except the fools, have similar levels of intelligence. They only differ in terms of zeal and tenacity. Charles Darwin, the man who proposed the theory of evolution, didn't claim that he was exceptionally bright. In his autobiography, he said that his memory and concentration were limited. He made his discoveries by analyzing questions until he found the answer. Darwin kept on trying to solve problems that other people had given up on. Potential and actualization. William James, a psychologist from Harvard, studied the difference between people when pursuing goals. In an essay for Science, a famous academic journal, James discussed the relationship between effort and failures or achievements. He wrote that people are just half awake compared to what they can achieve. In general, a person only uses a tiny portion of his resources, like physical, mental, psychological, etc. A gap exists between having potential and actualizing it. Regardless of the talents a person has, athletic, artistic, entrepreneurial, etc., he usually doesn't maximize his powers and resources. Each person has a wide range of powers that he continuously fails to utilize. James admitted that limits certainly exist, but the outer boundaries, the limits to one's ability to grow, are irrelevant to most people. To become an exceptional individual, you have to use your abilities and resources to the fullest. Important note, your talent doesn't seal your future. The effort you put in determines how far you can go in life. Effort counts twice. Talent is one of the most used and abused words today. This word is used to describe actors, athletes, musicians, politicians, etc. In fact, people almost always use this word when talking and/or writing about a person who does something great. It is good to recognize talent. However, it shouldn't be overemphasized. When you allude every extraordinary achievement to talent, you'll end up underemphasizing other factors. There are many people who believe that talent leads to achievement, and those who succeed ought to be talented. Let's use two famous politicians to illustrate this point. Bill and Hillary Clinton are known for their excellent communication skills. However, people, political analysts, think that Bill is a natural politician. Hillary, meanwhile, is just trying to adjust to the role. In other words, Bill is naturally talented, while Hillary is just a striver. This is the reason why some people think why Hillary will never reach her husband's level. Persistence in sports. In a study entitled The Mundanity of Excellence, Dan Chambliss made an important conclusion. Human achievements, even the most amazing ones, consist of various ordinary elements. Chambliss said that excellent performance is the sum of skills and/or activities that have been mastered and synthesized. The skills or activities involved here are nothing out of the ordinary. However, they produce excellence when done correctly and consistently. The concept of talent fascinated Chambliss. He spent several years watching, interviewing, and living with many swimmers and swimming coaches. According to him, talent serves as the most popular way of explaining athletic success. People talk about talent as if it's an actual substance that drives performance and separates the best athletes from the rest of the pack. Additionally, excellent athletes are deemed to possess something that typical humans don't. His observation is spot on. If a person does something amazing and explainable, people usually link it to talent, a rare gift that cannot be learned. Simply put, a person is classified as a natural when others don't know how training and experience helped him achieve excellence. Talent, magic, and Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher who lived in the 19th century, once wrote that people don't ask questions when things are perfect. They simply rejoice, as if it all happened magically. Things are more wonderful if you didn't see how it came to be. That's because if you saw how the creator toiled to finish his work, you'll no longer be amazed. Humans almost always choose mystery over mundanity. Nietzsche said that people overemphasize talent because of self-love. If you will just believe that excellence is magical, you won't have to compare yourself with successful people and find yourself lacking. His conclusion about greatness is similar to that of Chambliss. According to Nietzsche, you can accomplish great things by thinking actively in a single direction, utilizing the tools and resources available to you, and observing yourself and the people around you. Angela Duckworth's theory. While in graduate school, Angela Duckworth developed a theory regarding the effect of effort on achievement. Her theory consists of two simple equations, which are talent times effort equals skill, and skill times effort equals achievement. Here, talent determines how fast you acquire and/or improve skills when you exert effort. Achievement happens when you use your skills. Note that this theory is limited. It doesn't include luck and outside forces. For example, additional learning opportunities, like competitions, and access to great teachers or coaches can help a person achieve outstanding development. However, they are not considered in Duckworth's theory. Despite the limitations of the theory, it is a useful tool in explaining how talent and effort affect achievement. Assuming that people are in identical situations, the achievement that they will attain depends on two things: effort and talent. Talent is certainly important because it affects how fast you learn. However, the effort is more important since it shows up twice in Duckworth's equations. You need effort to develop your skills. Then you need effort to put those skills to practical use. How gritty are you? Grit is more than just doing things passionately. It requires you to stay working on the same thing over a long period of time. Thus, stamina is more important than intensity when it comes to evaluating a person's grit. If you can work on a project for 2 years or more, despite all the setbacks that you might encounter, you can call yourself gritty. However, there are times when projects get canceled because of uncontrollable reasons. In these situations, grit is present if you will work on a similar project or in the same industry. You don't really have to stay with the same employer, but gritty people don't jump from one type of project to another. There is no shortcut when it comes to achieving excellence. You have to spend considerable time in order to develop expertise, and the time involved here is way much longer than you initially expected. Once you have acquired the required expertise, you will also spend some time using it to generate value for other people, e.g. customers. Measuring your grit. The statements given below are derived from Angela Duckworth's Grit Scale. These statements will help you figure out how gritty you are. In addition, you will be able to compare your grit with that of most people. First set. You get distracted by new ideas and/or projects. You often switch goals. You lose focus when working on something that lasts for a long time. Your interests change on a yearly basis. You've lost interest on something you've been obsessed with. Second set. You are hardworking. You finish what you started. You don't quit easily. Problems and failures cannot discourage you. You are diligent. You overcame challenges to reach your goals. Rate the first set of statements using the following numbers. 1. Strongly agree. 2. Agree. 3. Undecided. 4. Disagree. 5. Strongly disagree. For the second set of questions, use the following. 5. Strongly agree. 4. Agree. 3. Undecided. 2. Disagree. 1. Strongly disagree. Add up the numbers you chose and divide the sum by 10. The result that you'll get is your grit score. The highest score that you can get is 5, while the lowest is 1. Note that this test reflects your view of yourself right now. Your current grit is likely to be different from your grit 5 years ago, and your score might change if you will take this test again in a few years. Grit consists of 2 elements, perseverance and passion. The test given above lets you get a score for each element. To rate your perseverance, add up the numbers for the second set of questions and divide the sum by 5. To rate your passion, add up the numbers for the first set and divide the sum by 5. A high score on one element usually comes with a high score on the other. However, it is likely that your score on passion is lower than your score on perseverance. This assumption applies to most people. Duckworth said that when she took the test, her score on passion was 4.2, while that on perseverance was 5. According to her, maintaining one's focus over a long time period is more difficult than overcoming challenges and working hard. Grit grows. Like other psychological traits, grit can be inherited. It is passed on from one generation to another through genes. However, it doesn't mean that your grit reflects that of your parents, or that it will stay like that forever. On the contrary, your grit changes based on many factors. Some people are naturally gritty. They obtain the trait from their parents who are also gritty. However, grit can also be nurtured. That means a person who doesn't have grit in his genes can still be gritty, depending on how he will approach life. And a person who is genetically gifted can end up as a quitter, depending on how he will live his life. The heritability of grit. Scientists are sure that nurture and nature affect traits such as grit. Their certainty resulted from decades of continuous research. Specifically, they studied fraternal and identical twins. Fraternal twins share about 50% of their DNA, while identical twins have perfect copies. This information, together with statistics, helped researchers in determining a trait's heritability. In a recent study in London, about 2,000 teenage twins took Duckworth's Grit Scale test. The study generated interesting results. The estimated heritability score of perseverance is 37%, while that of passion is 20%. These results match the estimated heritability scores of other traits. Simply put, genes have a significant effect on a person's grit. However, experience plays a larger role in developing and determining the said trait. Note that grit involves more than just one gene. Like other human traits, grit is polygenic. The genome of humans consists of about 25,000 genes. These genes interact with each other and with the factors present in the environment. Age and grit. Duckworth administered the Grit Scale test to American adults. In that study, she discovered that age and grit have a direct and positive relationship. The grittiest people in her sample were 65 years old or older. Meanwhile, those with the least grit were 25 to 34 years old. This discovery can be explained in two ways. Generation-based theory. Adults who are in their 60s or 70s might be grittier because of the cultural era they lived in. When they were young, their environment required high levels of sustained perseverance and passion. Therefore, a senior citizen might be grittier than a millennial because of the difference in cultural forces. This theory matches the common complaint of older people against the younger generation. Millennials are not as hardworking as the previous generations. Before, people stayed in the same company or industry for several decades. These days, however, it is not uncommon for people to jump from one employer and/or industry to another. Maturation theory. This theory states that people become grittier as they grow old. Grit improves when the person matures. When a person identifies his life philosophy, learns to pick up himself after failing, and knows how to distinguish the goals worth pursuing, he will likely develop a high level of grit. Basically, your capacity to remain passionate and determined over the longer term improves as you get older. 4 reasons for quitting. Contrary to what many people think, there are clear reasons why quitters quit. These reasons are boredom, the reward doesn't seem to justify the effort required, the idea or project is unimportant to the person, lack of confidence. It's okay to have the thoughts described above. In fact, even the grittiest people in the world have quit on a few things at some point in their life. However, these people tend to see things through when it comes to high-level goals. Gritty people have 4 assets that counter the 4 reasons listed above. These assets require considerable time and follow a certain order. 1. Interest. You will have passion when you are interested in what you are doing. It's not necessary that you love all the minute details of your work. It's enough that you like the overall picture. 2. Practice. You should try to perform better than you did last time. After identifying an idea or project that interests you, do everything you can to master the requisite skills and techniques. 3. Purpose. Your performance will improve dramatically if you believe that your job matters. It's extremely difficult to sustain interest if it doesn't have a purpose. Thus, your work should do 2 things. 1. Keep you interested. And 2. Help other people in some way. 4. Hope. You should keep going even if things get rough. You will surely have doubts. Problems and failures will hinder your plans. It's all natural. However, you shouldn't quit no matter what. Pick yourself up whenever the situation knocks you down. Growing grit from inside out. Interest. Do what you love is a common advice that commencement speakers give to graduating students. For these people, almost all of which are highly successful, new graduates should use passion as a guide in finding the right job. If you don't have a passion for what you are doing, they say, you will quit sooner or later. Hester Lacey, a journalist who writes for the Financial Times, has been talking to successful people for many years. She conducts these interviews for her weekly column. After talking to hundreds of mega successful individuals, she was able to identify the characteristics they share. The people she interviewed all said one thing: they love what they're doing. They use different words and approaches, but the message is the same. They do what they do not just because it's necessary or financially lucrative. They work because they're passionate about their work. The importance of passion. Scientists have studied the relationship between passion and performance. As of today, they have found 2 distinct effects of passion on performance. These are: a job becomes more satisfactory if it matches the personal interests of the individual. This conclusion applies regardless of the individual's age or profession. People who love technical details, for example, wouldn't want to work on abstract projects. Abstract thinkers, on the other hand, wouldn't enjoy dealing with the minute details of the projects they're assigned to. In addition, people whose work matches their interests are more content and happy. A person works better when his job interests him. If your personal interests match your occupation, you're likely to become a productive worker, help your colleagues, and stay in the same company. A college student is likely to graduate if his course and major subject are aligned with his personal interests. How passion develops. In the beginning, Angela Duckworth assumed that gritty people discovered their passion in a particular moment. She thought that passion gets revealed during a single event. However, she discovered that her assumption was wrong. Almost all paragons of grit spent a considerable amount of time exploring various interests, and the interest that captivated them fully wasn't particularly attractive at first glance. Rowdy Gaines, a swimmer who won a gold medal in the Olympics, said that he loved sports even as a kid. He played golf, tennis, baseball, football, and basketball prior to joining a swim team. After trying out for the said team, he actually thought he would be cut, so he planned to join another team. Swimming wasn't his first love, nor was it a love at first sight, but he kept on doing it until he succeeded. People who love their jobs are certainly enviable, but don't think that their passion suddenly appeared out of thin air. It's likely that they spent some time trying out different things to find the one they really love. The psychology of passion. According to psychologists, passion consists of 3 phases: discovery, development, and deepening. The discovery phase is the shortest. Development requires a long time, and deepening lasts for a lifetime. Your interests when you were a kid are unlikely to determine your choices as an adult. That's because when you were little, you had limited knowledge about yourself and the opportunities available to you, and the world you would live in. Your idea about your own likes and dislikes was incomplete. Additionally, you can't discover your interests through introspection. Interests will only appear if you will interact with your environment. Identifying your interests can be inefficient and serendipitous. That's because you can't force yourself to love things, and you can't predict what things in life will captivate you either. Once you have found your passion, it will undergo a lengthy process of development. Seeing something one time is not enough. You have to encounter something multiple times before it can grab your attention fully. Lastly, passion thrives when you have supporters, parents, colleagues, mentors, etc., to encourage you. Other people are important because they provide you with the necessary information and stimulation to continue liking what you're doing. The positive feedback that comes from them also helps in boosting your happiness and confidence. Practice. Grittier people spend more time practicing their craft than those who are less gritty. In turn, the extra practice often leads to superior performance. This statement is easy to prove and understand. In math classes, for example, there are kids who spend 0 minutes studying their lessons. Others spend several hours each day. Thus, one of grit's benefits is that it allows you to spend more time on whatever you're working on. However, there are people who spend countless hours practicing their craft without exhibiting any progress. You probably know someone who has spent many years doing something that is still far from being an expert. He's just good enough to stay employed. The Kaizen Principle. Kaizen is a principle that the Japanese people have used to combat arrested progress. It is a Japanese word which literally means continuous improvement. Kaizen became popular in the world of business because it helped Japanese manufacturers, and Duckworth says that all of the paragons of grit she interviewed exuded Kaizen. Deliberate practice. Anders Ericsson, a cognitive psychologist, studied how experts obtain their skills. Some of his subjects were chess grandmasters, prima ballerinas, Scrabble champions, and Olympic athletes. Ericsson learned that skills improve as time goes on. However, the rate of improvement slows down as the individual gets better. This statement applies to everyone. The learning curve in itself is not that surprising. The shocking part of Ericsson's study is the time frame involved in the learning process. According to Ericsson, one has to practice for 10,000 hours over a period of 10 years in order to achieve mastery. The 10-year rule and 10,000-hour rule became viral because they give a glimpse of the investment required to become an elite performer. Note that experts don't just spend more time than successful individuals. The former employs a different approach to practice. In particular, an expert spends thousands of hours doing deliberate practice. Here are the different aspects of deliberate practice. Setting a goal. When specifying an objective, an expert chooses a single element of his overall performance. He doesn't work on his strengths. Rather, he focuses on his weaknesses. They look for challenges that they cannot overcome yet. Reaching the goal. Next, the expert strives to achieve his objective. It is important to note that many experts complete this step alone. Kevin Durant, one of the best NBA players today, said that he spends about 70% of his practice time by himself. Obtaining feedback. Ask for feedback as soon as you complete a practice session. Don't worry if the feedback is mostly negative. Use the information to find and eliminate your weaknesses. Analyzing the results. Practice is useless if you will keep on doing the wrong stuff. Check the results of your practice and figure out what you did wrong. This way, you can make sure that you are benefiting from your practice sessions. Rinse and repeat. Once you've reached your goal, it's time to look for another performance to work on. Mastering your craft is an ongoing process. There are many things that you have to learn. Purpose. You can find your passion in things that benefit you, but passion can also be found in ideas and activities that benefit other people. Mature and gritty people combine these sources to find a passion to live for. In some cases, purpose comes before self-interest. Alex Scott, a brave young girl who was diagnosed with cancer, operated a lemonade stand when she was just 4 years old. She used the funds to help other cancer patients. When she passed away several years later, her family continued her mission. At the time of writing, the non-government organization named after her has raised about $100 million for cancer studies. Alex's story is extraordinary. However, most people are attracted to stuff that gives them joy. It takes some time before they appreciate how their work benefits others. Simply put, a person usually starts working because of self-interest, then develops the discipline that helps him continue, and discovers that the work can be other-centered. The 3-step sequence described above is a discovery of a psychologist named Benjamin Bloom. He interviewed world-class artists, athletes, scientists, and mathematicians to determine how successful people reach their level. The sequence he found represents a learning model that applies to everyone. Although the people he interviewed differed in terms of training and upbringing, they all went through 3 developmental periods. Bloom referred to these periods as early years, middle years, and later years. Purpose versus pleasure. All the grit paragons Duckworth interviewed felt that their work helps other people. In big or small ways, their work allows them to make the world a better place. When Duckworth learned that purpose matters, she tried to compare its value with other priorities. She thought that single-mindedness is usually selfish instead of selfless. According to Aristotle, a person can pursue happiness in 2 ways. He called the first option eudaimonic, from 2 ancient Greek words, eu, or good, and daemon, or inner spirit. The other one is hedonic, which focuses on self-centered experiences. Aristotle said that eudaimonism is pure and noble, whereas hedonism is vulgar and primitive. Modern psychologists believe that humans naturally seek happiness through hedonism and eudaimonism. It's just that the weight assigned to each of these pursuits differ from one person to another. There are people who care about pleasure more than purpose. Others choose purpose over pleasure. Angela Duckworth surveyed 16,000 American adults to identify the motivations behind grit. In that study, she discovered that gritty individuals are not hedonists nor monks. When it comes to seeking pleasure, a gritty person and a non-gritty person acts and behaves the same way. Thus, pleasure is important regardless of the person's grit. On the contrary, gritty people are more likely to strive for an other-centered life. In other words, people who consider purpose as highly important are grittier than those who don't. Important note, it doesn't mean that the paragons of grit are saints. Instead, gritty individuals believe that their personal goals influence other people in the world they live in. The 3 bricklayers. When asked what they were doing, 3 bricklayers gave different answers. The first one said he was laying bricks. The second bricklayer said he was constructing a church. Then the last one said he was building God's house. The 3 bricklayers were doing the same thing, but they saw their actions differently. The first one saw laying bricks as a job. The second one saw it as a career. The last one thought of it as a calling. The third bricklayer is the most fortunate among the 3 because he saw the ultimate consequence of his work. It didn't matter whether his work was small and or tiring. As the parable given above shows, you can have a job, a career, or a calling regardless of what you do for a living. It's all about looking at your work differently. Don't worry if you can't see how your work benefits others right now. Research shows that many people who view their work as a job usually see it as a calling after some time. Just continue doing what you're doing. In time, you will discover how your work makes the world a better place to live in. There are two types of hope. The first one expects that life will inevitably improve. This type of hope makes people believe that a nicer path and a sunnier weather will come sooner or later. The person himself doesn't have any responsibility. He assumes that the world will do things on his behalf. The second type of hope is significantly different. It assumes that things will become better based on a person's efforts. You will have a better tomorrow if you work for it. Your problems will go away if you will solve them. This type of hope doesn't rely on luck. Rather, it relies on the person's hard work and perseverance. It is also the form of hope that gritty people have. Angela Duckworth studied neurobiology when she was a college freshman. Although she worked hard, she still failed 2 exams. A teaching assistant told her to drop the course and take it later. If Duckworth continued the class, she might end up having a failing mark on her transcript. After that conversation, she talked to the registrar, but instead of dropping out, she decided to make neurobiology as her major subject. She got knocked down, but she picked herself up. She took extra work and strove to attain perfect performance. Due to her persistence and hard work, she was able to ace the final exam. Uncontrollable suffering. In 1964, 2 psychology students named Steve Mayer and Marty Seligman studied how hopelessness can be taught to animals. Specifically, they electrocuted dogs which were trapped in cages. They had 2 different setups. Some of the cages had a panel that could stop the electrocution immediately. The rest of the cages didn't have any panel. The dogs who had access to the panel used it to reduce their suffering. Meanwhile, the other dogs couldn't do anything but accept the punishment. The next day, the psychologists changed their setup altogether. They used a cage that had a low barrier. A dog could jump over it easily. The dogs were still electrocuted, but they could prevent it by leaping over the said wall. In this experiment, almost all of the dogs who had access to panels leaped over the barrier. However, most of the dogs who had no control over the electric shocks the other day didn't do anything to protect themselves. They just whimpered and waited for their suffering to stop. After the experiment, Mayer and Seligman concluded that hopelessness can be taught to humans and animals. In addition, suffering doesn't always lead to hopelessness. A person becomes hopeless if he thinks he cannot do anything to alleviate or eliminate his suffering. Learned optimism. Marty Seligman retrained in the field of clinical psychology. Since he had explored learned helplessness, Seligman focused on its flip side, learned optimism. He started this work because of an interesting insight. About 33% of the dogs who had no control over their punishment jumped over the wall. That means some of the dogs remained resilient even after going through uncontrollable suffering. They still looked for ways to relieve their pain despite the previous trauma. Seligman discovered that optimists and pessimists have about equal chances of experiencing bad events. The main difference between these 2 types of people lies in how they explain their situation. Optimists indicate specific and temporary reasons. For instance, they might say that they made a mistake or that they lacked focus. Basically, they're saying that the cause of their problem is fixable. Pessimists, on the other hand, blame pervasive and permanent causes. It's not uncommon for a pessimist to say that he is a loser, that he keeps on screwing up everything. In addition, his failure to succeed seems to apply to most, if not all, aspects of his life. He was a born loser, and he can't do anything to change his destiny. Paragons of grit explain failures optimistically. They believe that there is a specific reason why they failed, and they can do something to change the outcome in the future. With this mindset, you'll have what Seligman calls learned optimism. Growing grit from the outside in. Parenting for grit. How do you make people gritty? How can you teach grit to your loved ones? There are 2 main answers to this question. The first one depends on adversity. problems, and failures make a person stronger. This perspective is the basis of tough love parenting. The proponents of this view assume that setting high standards and giving loving support cannot be mixed. The second answer, on the other hand, claims that support and affection are the best tools for teaching grit. At the time of writing, there is no conclusive evidence that supports either of the answers given above. Many people have studied parenting, and some scientists have studied grit. However, there's no research about grit and parenting yet. Instead of waiting for psychologists to do some research, however, let's discuss two paragons of grit: Steve Young and Francesca Martinez. Steve Young. Steve Young is a legendary football player. He won many awards when he was still playing as a quarterback. In addition, he won the Super Bowl 3 times. Young believes that he succeeded because of how his parents raised him. There was a time when he wanted to quit from his college football team, but his dad forced him to stay with the team. After that conversation, Young worked hard to improve his game. In his 3rd year with the team, he became the starting quarterback. Then, in his 4th year, he was hailed as the country's best quarterback. Because of his parents, Young learned how to endure difficulties as well as the importance of seeing things through. He did his best to finish anything he had started. Even though he spent 4 years as a bench warmer for the 49ers, he didn't ask for a trade. Rather, he continued to train until his skills became highly noticeable. Note, however, that Young's parents were not completely authoritarian. They didn't ignore the needs of their children, nor did they focus on the standards they established. In fact, they showed support and affection whenever their children felt like quitting. They succeeded in teaching grit and discipline by displaying those traits themselves. LeGrand Young, Steve's father, for instance, made sure that he'll be home during weekends, even if it meant consecutive flights and hours of driving. Francesca Martinez. Francesca Martinez is considered as one of the best stand-up comedians in the UK. She has cerebral palsy, a disorder that makes speaking and moving difficult. However, she didn't let her condition stop her from achieving her dreams. In fact, aside from being a comedian, she's also a writer and an actress. In an interview with Angela Duckworth, Martinez said that she got her passion and hard work from her family. The positivity and support she received helped her to reach where she is now. At the age of 16, Francesca wanted to quit school and enter the entertainment industry. Most people thought that she wouldn't succeed, considering her physical condition. However, her parents encouraged her to follow her dreams. It is important to note that her parents also showed tough love. For example, her father forced her to perform therapy exercises that were prescribed by doctors. She hated those exercises, which caused countless battles between her and Mr. Martinez. Francesca wanted to find a workaround for her condition. Her father, meanwhile, believed in the benefits of the said exercises. He felt that it was his job to make his daughter do what's best for her. Important note: being a tough parent and being a loving one aren't mutually exclusive. In many cases, being tough is the best way to show your love to other people. The playing fields of grit. Angela Duckworth believes that extracurricular activities like ballet, basketball, karate can enhance a child's grit. These activities have 2 characteristics that can't be found in others. First, a non-parent adult is in charge. This is important because children will recognize authority even outside their homes. Second, extracurricular activities naturally cultivate the elements of grit, like hope, purpose, practice, and interest. Some researchers have studied how kids felt when doing certain activities. They discovered that a child feels challenged when he is in class. However, he is not motivated. Playing with friends is fun, but not challenging. When it comes to extracurricular activities, like playing basketball, kids have fun and feel challenged. That means extracurricular activities are the best source of challenge and enjoyment for children. The long-term benefits of extracurricular activities. Research studies have shown that children who participated in extracurricular activities are better than those who didn't in almost all aspects: grades, self-esteem, likelihood to finish studies, etc. Some of these are longitudinal studies, which means the researchers observed the subjects over a long period of time. The long-term studies have similar conclusions. Kids who participated in extracurriculars experienced better outcomes in life than those who don't. In addition, previous studies have shown that it is rare for a child to experience an overdose of extracurricular activities. A typical teenager spends at least 3 hours per day playing computer games and watching the TV. Even more time is wasted on activities such as sharing URLs of cat videos and checking Facebook feeds. If teens can spend hours on such activities, they can surely allocate some time for adult-guided, skill-focused, and structured ones. Grit and extracurricular activities. As mentioned earlier in this book, grit requires the individual to spend years on a single idea or project. Since extracurricular activities help in training grit, it is safe to say that they give more benefits if they're done for a long time. The experience of grit paragons supports this assumption. For example, Steve Young had a lackluster season while playing football in high school. He improved his performance by creating a DIY practice tool and working on his game alone. His practice produced excellent results. He doubled the yardage of his passes during the next season. A culture of grit. Pete Carroll, one of the top coaches in the NFL today, said that he is looking for competitors. A player has to have grit if he wants to be a member of Seahawks. For Carroll, a player should think that he will succeed and that he has to prove himself. A resilient mentality is also mandatory. In other words, Carroll is looking for grit. The importance of culture. The culture you live in affects your life in many ways. In this book, the term culture isn't political or geographic. Rather, it's the psychological boundaries that separate a person from others. Basically, you can define a culture based on the values and norms of the people who belong to it. That means a culture exists whenever 2 or more people agree on why things should be done and how. For many people, the company they work for serves as a powerful cultural force. For example, an employee might have a collection of company-issued items in his house and light up whenever he sees the company's TV. He might even talk about the upper management of the company as if they are war heroes. It's easy to know whether a culture you belong to has affected you deeply. When a person adopts a culture, he feels an absolute commitment to the group. There are no ifs or buts. It's either he's a member or he is not. He states his commitment using nouns, not just verbs or adjectives. Note that being in a culture doesn't guarantee grittiness. The grittiness of the culture is highly important. Gritty cultures develop gritty individuals. Thus, leaders who want to have gritty people should establish grittiness in their company's culture. Conformity and grit. Roughly 3 decades after studying the origins of expertise, Dan Chambliss said that he still believes in his conclusions. He still thinks that talent doesn't guarantee excellence, that qualitative skill improvements are necessary, and that excellence is just a combination of doable and mundane acts. But now, he believes in another theory. A person should join an excellent team if he wants to be excellent. This theory might sound strange at first. Most people assume that a person needs to attain excellence before he can join an excellent team. Obviously, excellent teams have stringent admission requirements. The number of available spots is limited, and each potential member has to meet high standards. Additionally, the existing members of elite teams usually strive to maintain the said standards. However, Chambliss's theory is not without merit. Actually, he's referring to the positive effects that an excellent culture has on its members. His research and personal experience helped him discover an important point. Elite teams enhance the skills they look for in potential candidates. For example, an excellent team might screen candidates based on their work ethic. Upon joining the team, a new member is expected to work even harder. Thus, a person can reach higher levels of excellence if he experiences the pressures of being in an excellent team. Chapter 3. Conclusion. At this point, you should have a clear idea of how grit can help you reach your goals. What you achieve in life depends on your grit, how passionate and tenacious you are when it comes to long-term objectives. Don't let talent distract you from this truth. Grit can grow. There are 2 main ways of improving your grit. First, you may grow it from the inside. Look for new interests, challenge yourself through deliberate practice, look for a deeper purpose, and hope when things are looking bad. Second, you can work from the outside. This approach requires the help of other people, like bosses, parents, mentors, etc. Success is not everything. You surely want to succeed in whatever it is you're doing. That desire is natural. However, don't let it blind you. Remember that happiness is also important. Success and happiness are often related, but they're two different things. You can succeed without being happy, and you can be happy without being successful. But obviously, you would want to do something that gives you success and happiness at the same time. Excess grit. Duckworth has an unanswered question. Can a person have excessive grit? It is common knowledge that too much of anything is bad. For instance, Aristotle once said that excessive bravery results in folly. With this type of logic, a person can be too honest, too kind, and too generous. Barry Schwartz and Adam Grant, two distinguished psychologists, stated that the benefits you can get from any trait follow an inverted U pattern. However, there's no proof that this pattern applies to grit. It's true that every choice comes with its own disadvantages, and that gritty decisions are not exempted from this rule. For example, there are situations where the best option is to give up. You might remember some periods in your life where you should have quit earlier. Your time is limited. If you will finish everything you started, you will surely miss out on better things in life. It is okay to stop taking voice lessons if you don't have the talent or passion for singing. By quitting early, you'll be able to save your time and that of your teacher. That means you will have more time to find an activity that you truly like and that your teacher can spend more time instructing other students who might be more interested and more talented than you. Grit is not everything. Do not think that grit is the only quality you need to become successful in life. There are other traits that you should develop, traits that are certainly more important than grit. Goodness and greatness are two different things, and according to Angela Duckworth herself, she would choose goodness over greatness. Many studies have shown that morality is the most important element of character. Laziness is bad. However, the lack of integrity, honesty, and trustworthiness is way worse. Many talented people have failed miserably, whereas less talented people reach the top of their respective fields. You need to spend time and effort to turn your talent into something useful. Talent can be highly distracting. It makes people believe that excellent performance is a gift from the heavens, that top performers simply wake up each day ready to amaze mere mortals. Remember that talent is just the potential to learn quickly. It doesn't guarantee success, especially if talented people don't work hard. On the contrary, hard work can help you attain great results, even without much talent. It's all about showing up, doing what you need to do, and picking yourself up whenever you fall down.